Welcome to another episode of Playing Injured. I'm pumped for this episode because we have the pitch whisperer. And for folks who don't know who the pitch whisperer is, it's John Livesay. He's a sales keynote speaker. He's an author. Most recent book that he's released this year is The Sale is in the Tail. John, how are we doing today?
It's so good to be with you. I love your energy. I'm looking forward to a great conversation and giving everybody some real takeaways to make their life just a little better.
A little better. If it could be a little better, I'm sure people would take it. Well, perfect. John, who is John Livesay, and how does he spend his time today?
Well, what really lights me up is getting to know people. I was flying back from Florida from the holidays, and I happened to sit next to this really interesting guy who's led this amazing life and lived in all these countries and started a charity for children. And asking people to tell me their story is something that I just love. And then I will say, you have climbed this mountain. I interviewed somebody. I met this speaker Alison Levine, who climbed Mount Everest, and she told me her story. Or he's like, I'm really into art. And I'm like, that Vincent van Gogh song, so it was just really flowing. And that's really my passion, is now at this stage in my life and career, engaging with people and hearing their stories. And then more importantly, if anybody's struggling with being on the self-esteem roller coaster, because I was on it for years, and it's exhausting and you burn out. You only celebrate the wins, whether it's in sports or career or relationships, and then you let that go. Maybe you give yourself like a minute, and then you're on to now how am I gonna beat myself next year, or what's next? But man, if we lose a game or we lose a job or we lose a sale, we love to just marinate in that sauce. And the goal for me is to help people start thinking of yourself as a movie director in your own life. So you zoom out and you say, wait a minute, who I am is bigger than any one thing happening to me.
Yes. Yep.
But all the way back to school, where like if a kid got a B or a C, then they would feel, I'm a bad student. No, it just means you did not so great on that one test. It doesn't mean you're a bad student or a bad person even. And so that ability to detach from what's happening to us in the moment is really what lights me up.
John, deep. That is deep. Reason why I say that is because recently I've came to this realization with myself.
Nice.
As a high achiever, people who achieve things, right? We kind of get our self-esteem from these accomplishments.
Right. Especially if you got rewarded for that, like here's a trophy, here's your parents are happy, we're proud of you, but then your brain goes, they're only proud of me or love me or accept me if I'm winning first place all the time, and then if I come in second, does that mean I'm not as great? Yes. And I think, like you said, it becomes this roller coaster. My value is only based off of my performance and not the person who I am. And so when I fail, right, or if I'm not performing to the level that I need to be, or even deeper, if I'm not being, people start to not be their true authentic self. They become a character of who they think they should be. You're so right. Just to get these masks, right? Let me be the best son, the best student, the best employee, the best whatever. And I never have a bad day. I'm not human, and the big insight for me was, in our vulnerability is where we have true connection. And as a sales keynote speaker, that's one of the things I've really learned is, yes, people want to know that you've got the credibility to be up on that stage, but they also don't want you to be too slick and never tell a story of when you weren't doing so well or had confidence challenges or whatever the issue was, because the only way anyone's going to relate to you is if you show some vulnerability. Like, I haven't always felt this way, or, here's a story of me falling and not getting up as fast as I would have liked, or whatever the issue is, that really is how we connect. And so instead of being a perfectionist, which so many high achievers like you are, And especially in athletics, we're focused on that. I know I used to get videotaped when I was competitively swimming, right? You're cupping your hand and your elbow's not high enough. And the nuances are just, micro. And even as a speaker, I watch my footage back, it's just like I'm an athlete. It's really interesting with the coach. And they're like, tweak this, take a longer pause. So you can get in your head that I have to be perfect. No, I made up a new word I want to introduce to you.
Let's hear
everyone else. It's called being a progressionist instead of a perfectionist.
Yeah.
Because when our brain says, well, don't be a perfectionist, then you're like, well, what am I going to be? So our brain is wired for celebrating progress. That's why Fitbit works. That's why video games work. You've made it to the next level. So when you celebrate progress and say, I'm a progressionist, let's say you're climbing Mount Everest, as this gentleman I met and Allison Levine did. You're halfway up. You can look down and you go, wow, look how much progress that we've made. Or you can look up and go, oh, look how much further we have to go. Right. Or I slipped on a rock. It really wasn't the perfect climb or whatever. The weather's not perfect. You just start obsessing on what's not right. So I tell people, when you start your day, or if you're managing people, open with, let's go around the room and everybody celebrate some progress we made. Not necessarily a sale or hitting a goal, but what progress have we made towards that goal? And that sets the tone for the whole meeting every Monday morning or whenever you have your weekly meetings.
Yeah, 100%. I think a lot of detractors to progress is looking at other people's results. Looking at others, right? That is probably the number one thing that hurts our own progress, huh?
I learned this lesson in high school, competitive swimming. They would line us up in heats and we'd be, the person who had the fastest time always got the center perch. Yeah. And then they would go out accordingly. And so, you wait in these heats, different groups of people, and the last heat are the fastest swimmers. And I remember there's always this guy who beat me every race. And, the gun goes off, we dive in, and in breaststroke, you put your head down, you pull it up, you take a breath, and you put your head back down. And we're swimming. And, then you touch the wall, it measures your time to the thousandths of a second. Right. And they go, oh, congratulations, you beat this guy for the first time by half a second. I'm like, how did that happen? Well, while you stayed focused on the wall, he pulled his head up and looked half a second just to see if he was ahead of you or not. And that half a second of looking while you stayed focused on your own progress is what made you win.
Wow.
And I thought, life lesson. Okay. Cut to many years later, I'm selling advertising for Conde Nast, which is a big publisher of magazines and brands. And I was in the LA office. And they said, Vanity Fair and InStyle Magazine have these big Oscar parties across the street from each other. What are we going to do? And I said, well, we're not going to have another Oscar party. That's the last thing anybody needs, right?
Yeah.
And so we started brainstorming and we came up with the idea of having a party at the Golden Globes. And the editor loved it because it was the first award of the season in January. He goes, everyone's in a great mood. Nobody's lost anything. And we had a much smaller event because that's what the W magazine was about, intimacy. And we got celebrities to come to that. And so that's focusing on our own progress. What's our brand about? Right. And not trying to compete, because you only have so much time in the day.
100%.
Right? I'm not going to be better at what I'm doing. I'm going to worry about what everybody else is doing and try to, compare myself. And let me tell you, once you start comparing yourself to everybody, that is the gateway to the imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've ever experienced that, but I have. And that's another nightmare. So, but that focus on your own progress and your win is really valuable, not just in sports, but now it doesn't mean you don't pay attention to the competition. You don't know who the competition is, but but you're not obsessed with copying them, let's say.
Yes. Yeah. Copying them. And I feel like it all goes together, right? Once you realize like, okay, my performance isn't based, once I'm comfortable with who I am and my performance is not based on my value to the world and my value to myself, I'm not necessarily worried about everybody else's performance and results, right? So I love how you start off with, hey, this self-esteem roller coaster How can we start to even this out? And that's kind of the key to everything else.
It really is, that this baseline of I'm enough. Even if I never achieved one more thing, I never gave another interview, I never gave another talk, I never wrote another, whatever, right? Who I am is enough. Yeah. And otherwise, you've seen this in performances, right? Like, let's say there's a big show and they've got, one big star after another at an award show or something singing. Yeah. And they're like, ooh, good luck following that person, right?
Yeah.
Good luck following, who wants to follow Beyonce, right? Nobody. Right? Male or female. And the same thing can be true in the world of business and speaking. Yeah. When I gave my TEDx talk, this woman got up and just was amazing, Bonnie St. John, and she tells this great story about resilience, and she'd lost her left leg when she was young, and she's standing up on stage with a skirt on so you can see the prosthetic leg and the Paralympic medals around her neck, and she has this incredible story of they had 2 races and they took the average of the 2 times downhill skiing with prosthetic legs, mind you, and she was in first place. She went down the fastest. And then the second mountain was icier and everybody was falling, and she also fell. And then they averaged the times and they said, oh, overall, you came in second place. Right. While you were the fastest the first mountain, you were not the fastest getting back up after you fell. And so that's her whole message, is how life's going to knock us down. How fast do we get back up is everything. We're going to wallow in the self-pity, or we're going to get back up. And instead of being completely intimidated or nervous or freaked out that, oh my God, I'm not as good as she is. I don't have that dramatic of a story. I didn't lose a limb, whatever. I'm like, how wonderful that I get to share the stage with somebody that great.
Wow.
I reframed it because it was going down for a moment. You're like, ooh, I could really feel less than here. Or I can just like, you know what? You're now at the level where you get to share the stage with somebody like that, and you do you, boo. And that was, what came out was about being the lifeguard of your own life.
Yeah, and so I love that mindset. And so, like you said, the progress, you actually became a cheerleader for somebody else, as opposed to kind of worrying about like comparing yourself. You became their cheerleader, like, hey, you do you, and when I come on, it's almost like we're together, we're a team. As opposed to me trying to
one up you, or you one up me, and I can't possibly be as good. So I'm gonna let that get in my head and throw me off my game. And really, in addition to the self-esteem roller coaster, my concept is you're either coming from a place of abundance or scarcity.
Yeah.
And if you come from a place of abundance, you're like, there's enough talks for everyone who wants to be a speaker. I'm not taking a talk away from somebody. They're not taking a job, all that stuff, the right person for you to mate with, whatever, right? If you go into those situations from a scarcity mindset, you're like, somebody's winning and somebody's losing every single time. Yep. And then you're just anxious all the time. And true winning, abundance mindset is, I don't get this one, I'll get the next one. Right. Or maybe I'm a perfect fit for certain people and my career and my personality and my friendships, and I'm not everybody's cup of tea, and that's okay.
100%. I love that. So speaking about that, I think a lot of, like you said, the scarcity mindset comes from fears that people have, right? And I know, and we talked about the TED Talk that you have, which is an amazing TED Talk.
Thank you.
Over 1 million views, which has to feel good when you see it. But you don't get on an emotional self-esteem roller coaster when you see it.
Because there's people with 5 and 10 million. I mean, it never stops, right? If you start comparing yourself to other people, there's like, I remember reading about really wealthy celebrities being on a private Gulfstream jet and somebody going, oh, Arnold Schwarzenegger's jet's bigger than Tom Cruise's, or whatever. It's just like, it never stops. If you get up, you're on that roller coaster, and that comparison game, it's just never enough. And that's why you just got to go, I'm off the game. I'm off the roller coaster, kids. I'm going to be me. If it lands and a lot of people get something out of it, fantastic. But I'm certainly not going to let that number, whether it's my income, views, likes, comments, whatever, determine my self-esteem. That's consistent.
I love that so much, man. So let's talk about the 3 phases of fear, right? You talked about this in your TED Talk. And I think a lot of people in their mid-20s, I guess people in all facets of life go through some fears, right?
this concept that you outgrow fear, I wish. My mid-20s is, way in my rearview mirror, but you get a little less triggered and you stay less fearful longer. You bounce, you get more resilient as you get older if you keep working on it. So the first fear is the fear of rejection. And that's why half the people don't ever go into sales. I can't take the no. I don't like confrontation, whatever. I don't want to ask somebody out on a date. I don't want to, dream big and write a book. What if the publishers all say no, whatever. And my whole premise around the fear of rejection is you never reject yourself. I remember when I was calling on Lexus to advertise in the magazine I was representing, and they would say, no, we're going with Vanity Fair or whatever. Be like, ooh, maybe another rep could have gotten a yes. Or maybe they're right. Maybe Vanity Fair's magazine's better than what I'm selling. I'm rejecting myself. I'm rejecting what I'm selling. I'm like, nah, don't do that. Never reject yourself. And here's the other part of that is no now doesn't mean no forever.
Right.
And people change their mind. People leave their job, Then the other big fear is the fear of the unknown.
Yep.
And my suggestion there is don't go it alone. Get people to help you who've been on that path before. Don't try to figure everything out, and stop obsessing. Like when I would talk at UT Austin here to the graduating students, they're so scared about what's my future. Am I going to get a job? Is it going to be the right job? Blah, blah, blah. Or I talk to even younger people getting into the right university. They're stressed out about that and the test scores and you're the only place there's any peace of mind is in the present moment.
Yeah.
You can't obsess about the unknown, the future, and you can't certainly keep reliving what went wrong in the past. Somebody said or did something that pissed you. You're like, well, so we've got the fear of rejection, the fear of the unknown, and
failure as well.
Failure in general. And I remember somebody just said, if you're afraid of failure, you won't even fall down.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you just keep going until you get a zombie idea so great it won't die. That's what Jay Samit says.
Right.
And I love that. Whether it's an idea for a book or a podcast or a job you want or whatever, you just go, well, that didn't work. It's just feedback. I'm not afraid of it.
Yeah.
And you go, okay. So if we're not afraid of it, then again, our emotions are not on that roller coaster because it's like a failure doesn't mean you're a failure as a person. You don't have to walk around with a big L on your forehead, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's crazy because first of all, you talk about the failure of rejecting and not rejecting yourself and saying like, they said no because of me. Right.
Right.
And it's like, hey, maybe, it's some different things you could have done differently, but you are not the reason, you personally. So don't take a no personally. Don't take rejection personally because it's not personal.
This wonderful book, The 4 Agreements.
Yep.
It says, don't take anything personally.
Yes.
And I thought, what if I started working on not taking rejection personally?
Yeah.
And just double down on that one part of anything personally, right?
Yeah.
I joke. I said, when you're in traffic and you come to a red light, I have yet to meet one person who goes, I am so furious at that red light. How dare they turn red when I come to the intersection? We never take a red light in car traffic personally, right? It's just part of life. It's part of the flow. Yeah. But if we get a red light in our business or our personal life, I am taking that red light personally.
Yeah.
So I was like, the goal is to be as indifferent and unattached as you are in your car at a red light as you are when you get red lights in your life.
Yeah. And it's, attachment and detachment. We can have a whole podcast on that.
Oh, yeah.
Like trying to detach from the outcome. And like you said, even the fear of the unknown, like detaching from the control that you need to know what's going to happen and just letting go. Like, how can I just let go?
And be okay with what's happening now.
Yeah.
If you're not on, like you're stuck in traffic, your plane gets canceled, whatever, you get the no from your job or a sale you're trying to make. I'm not okay with this. Well, that's your own anxiety level, and you're the one choosing not to be okay with it. I came up with something to help people when they get frustrated or disappointed or discouraged or even betrayed, because that's part of life. Like we get cut off in traffic, right? You're going to, what's going to happen? I 5-5-5 it is my whole new thing here. It's easy to remember and easy to use. So somebody cuts you off in traffic. You're like, I'm going to let that go in 5 minutes, right? But I see some people like, I'm holding on to this for 5 hours, right? Oh, the whole day is ruined over that. So if you can't let it, but it's a choice. You're the movie director of your own life. I'm going to let this go in 5 minutes, 5 hours, 5 days from now. Surely 5 days from now, that's in your rearview mirror. And so I have a lot of people saying, we lost a big sale. We got somebody said or did something that really hurt us. We decided to 5 it. We're like, okay, we're going to give ourselves 5 hours to obsess about this and really complain and rag. And then we're going to stop. And if somebody starts complaining about it or bringing it up again, we're like, oh, we 5 that, remember? Right. Now, sometimes life gives us really big stuff beyond just business stuff. Like when my dad died several years ago, I wish I had this tool that I'd made up then. I could go back to my younger self and say, 5 days from now, yeah, you're going to still be pretty upset and sad.
Right.
But so let's do it again. How about 5 weeks, 5 months, 5 years from now? I would say, you know what? 5 years from now, you're still missing, but I promise you won't be this sad.
Yeah.
That
you won't be as emotionally charged. Yeah.
Of hope that 5 years. Okay. So start with the 5 minutes, 5 hours, 5 days. That's the majority of stuff. But if that isn't enough because it's a life, impactful thing like that, then do it again. And it's just so helpful. I love when people say, oh, I 5 something that I would normally be obsessing with for much longer. Because remember the Bonnie St. John story, right? Yeah. How fast we get back up is the key.
Yes. And how much better this actual experience will make you as a person.
Yeah. Right. And then you can, then you have a support group of your coworkers, your friends are like, oh man, let's 5 that. Right.
Yeah.
I was at the DMV. How fast can I 5 that?
Yeah. It becomes a joke. It almost like, it takes you out of it. It's like, wow, let's just 5 it and call it a day. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, I'm too blessed to be this stressed. Come on. Right.
100%. Way too blessed.
I get to have my feelings, but it's up to me how long I'm going to let it ruin my day.
100%. John, you talk a lot about storytelling, and just talking to you, you are a great storyteller. Okay. And I know you're a great storyteller because every story that you tell, even, you talk about different sales stories that you have with magazines, the TED Talk. And I'm able to visualize it in my head.
Yes.
As you tell it.
Great.
Right. You're taking me to another place. Yeah. And that's how you can really influence people as a leader, like you said, as a salesperson, but we are always in a state, I wouldn't say always selling, but we are always influencing people on ourselves, on a situation. It's always something that we can do to influence people as far as telling stories. When did you discover this? I guess power.
Power. Well, you said a couple things there, and then I'll answer that question. Yeah. I want to talk about when you tell a story, it's crucial that you paint a picture so that people feel in the story. I call that the exposition, like a journalist, right? Who, what, where, when, how long ago, what's the person's name, what are they wearing? Paint that picture, pull me into the story. That's one big thing you just acknowledged and saw. So that's if people want to say, how can I be a better story? That's the first step. Paint that picture. Then you said something about we're not always selling ourselves. The old way of selling is always be closing. Have you heard that?
Yeah, always be closing.
ABC. I changed it to ABK. Yeah. Always be kind.
Yeah.
To the way you talk to yourself and then other people.
Okay.
So people put it on a post-it note. I have t-shirts and sweatshirts that say ABK, always be kind. I had a friend wearing it. He goes, it's a little stressful this week with the holidays and the storms and this and that. And I happened to glance down at my ABK Always Be Kind sweatshirt and hoodie, and I was like, I could be a little kinder right now. And it's just a nice little reminder, and even more importantly, it has to be that self-talk stuff. All right. So how did I get into storytelling? Well, I majored in advertising, and I was completely fascinated by what motivates people to change brands or try something new or remember a jingle. Because these stories, really great commercials, Super Bowl commercials, they stand out in our mind. We remember them, and more importantly, we repeat them to other people. And so that's why advertising really intrigued me. It was like show business with business. And I worked for an ad agency for a while doing TV commercials when movies were coming out on home video. Remember Blockbuster, or are you too young for that?
I do remember Blockbuster. I used to go there every Friday after school. It was like an event for me. I love it.
For all of us. And so we would run commercials to get people to go look for one particular title at a Blockbuster. And we realized if the movie hadn't done very well at the movie theaters, we could retell that 30-second story differently to get people to want to rent or eventually buy the video. And so that was I'm like, oh, that's really where I honed my storytelling skills. So we're going to show, what's the announcer going to say? What music is it going to be? And then when I was selling advertisers, I remember Alexis would say, we looked at 15 magazines. We've narrowed it down to 8. We're going to pick 3. So the 8 of you get to come in for 30 minutes, back to back to back, media day. Don't talk about numbers. We've already analyzed it.
Right.
And half of the reps were a deer in headlights. Like, don't talk about the circulation or the reader's income. What am I going to talk about? And I realized, whoever tells the best story about what the marketing idea is going to be, why people read this magazine and why those people are the ideal target for this new launch, that's a psychographic discussion, not a demographic discussion. So that's when I went, I can take my storytelling skill sets from advertising and apply it to selling. And then I was off to the races from there.
100%. No, I love that. And I can hear that in, like you said, in most advertisement, it is telling a story. You see a commercial today for Nike. They never show the actual product.
Nope.
Right? They have, Ruffles potato chips is talking about own your ridges, right?
Yep.
And it's like, what does this have to do with eating a bag of potato chips? But for some reason, it builds an emotional connection and it is painting a picture for you to get behind.
You got it. We buy emotionally and then back it up with logic. And most brands want an emotional connection to the brand. And then you will stay loyal to that brand because you see yourself in that story.
100%. No, I love that. And so, you talked about being compelling and painting a picture, right? How can folks get better at that? I guess get more conscious, because I think it is a practice, right? You probably won't start off day one painting a perfect picture, but over time, you can get better at it.
Well,
what can folks start to do?
Well, I have a little checklist for everybody on how to tell a good story. The 3 C's, I call it. It should be concise. Because you want it to be short enough that people can remember and repeat and tell other people. If it's too long, you don't get to the point, they're like, oh, I'm out. It needs to be clear, because if you're using a bunch of acronyms and confusing people, the confused mind always says, I don't understand. And then it needs to be compelling, because we need to tug at heartstrings to have that emotional connection to get people to want to go on the journey with you. So when you've written a story or you're telling a story about another client you helped, use that checklist. Tell the story to a friend, your coworker, and say, was it clear? Was it concise? And they're like, well, you could cut it out a little bit here or there. Wasn't compelling. No, I didn't feel a thing. Right. So that's the first step. Let me give an example of a story that's clear, concise, and compelling. I was working with a healthcare company, Olympus Medical. They make devices from the camera technology, scopes and stuff. And they said, we have this great piece of equipment. It makes surgeries go 30% faster. We tell the doctors that, and we just don't understand why more aren't buying it right up. I said, well, you're pushing a number. It's logic. People buy emotionally, even this. So I asked a lot of questions, and now they tell this story. Imagine how happy Dr. Higgins was 6 months ago down at Long Beach Memorial. Using this equipment, he could go out to the patient's family an hour earlier than expected. And if you've ever waited for anybody you love to come out of surgery, every minute feels like an hour. He comes out, puts them out of their waiting misery, says, good news, the scope shows they don't have cancer. They're going to be fine. And then turns to the rep and says, this is why I became a doctor, from moments like this. Now that rep tells that story to another doctor at another hospital. And Josh, here's the secret. The other doctor sees himself in that story and says, wait a minute, that's why I became a doctor. I want your equipment too.
Yeah.
And the client's like, that gives us chills. Not only are we not telling a story, it never occurred to us to make a patient's family a character in the story. Who is really impacted by this surgery going faster? Is it the hospital making more money? Is it the doctor doing one more surgery for the day? Or is it the patient's family being put out of their waiting misery? And then I help pull you in the story by saying, if you've ever waited for someone you love, And even if you haven't, you could probably imagine it, or you know somebody who had to go through that. And I had to go through that when my sister was having surgery. So, we, as a storyteller, you're always looking for what is the universal truth here. I can't be the only person who's ever had to go through this.
I love that. What is the universal truth? Meaning, like, I'll be able to pull you into this story as if you are there and you feel like you're a part of it.
Right. And then the real secret to any great story is the resolution. What is life like after you've provided the solution? In this case, the story could have ended when the doctor came out and said they're going to be fine. But no, there's a little bit of dialogue in the present tense as if you're eavesdropping in on the conversation that the doctor said to the rep. And that's the resolution. And that's what hooks other people that want to go on the journey, is that imagine the Wizard of Oz ended when Dorothy got in the balloon. Back to Kansas, the end. But she's in bed. She's like, oh, there's no place like home. And you were there. And that's the resolution. That's why that story is a classic.
Yeah, giving them an ending. People can watch a movie and the ending is not satisfying. It's like, oh, this movie sucks, even though the whole movie was amazing, right?
Good up until then, but if there's no real, the ending, the resolution, some life takeaway, some lesson, and even if there's, I just watched Avatar 2, and there's going to be a sequel. They shot the 2 and 3 together, but they still have some real strong emotion takeaways at the end of, okay. We are all connected to the world and the planet and nature and family first, and all these wonderful messages that are bigger than 100%. The plot.
Yeah. No, that first of all, that's an amazing movie. That was, for folks who don't know, that was an amazing movie. And I saw it over the weekend. And like you said, being able to take something away from it, where it almost pulls at your life.
Yes.
It's how you connected with the movie, because you have experiences from your own life that you can connect with the movie, same as a story, right?
Literally, the question is, how would I behave in that situation?
Right.
Would I show up? Would I stop the bullying? Whatever it is. Yeah.
I love that, John. I love that. So the sale is in the tail. That is out on Amazon. I took a look at it. It was published around February sometime. Is Amazon the only place that folks can find?
Anywhere you get a book, including Audible. I narrated it. It's a business fable set here in Austin, where I live. So it's a story about storytelling, and it's about somebody stuck. The old ways of selling, pushing out facts isn't working. They don't know what to do. Somebody teaches them how to tell stories, and their whole career takes off, including their personal life. And then at the end, there's actual methodologies of what steps to use to become a better storyteller.
I love that. And then you talked about folks being able to get a free chapter.
Yes. If you take out your phone and you text the word pitch with a P, got to really emphasize that P, PITCH to 66866, boom, you'll get a free chapter, the first chapter of that book. And you can see if that's compelling enough to make you want to read more.
Perfect. I will put that in the show notes. Text the word pitch to 66866.
Exactly.
Did I get that right? All right. Yes. Let's do it. I love that. And then I want to make sure that we cover everything. Where can folks find you? You got amazing content on YouTube, Instagram. Where can folks find you?
Thanks. Well, if you can't remember my name or my book title, just Google The Pitch Whisperer. That's my Instagram handle. And all my content shows up under that. And also, if you're interested in getting some group coaching with me and Andrew Gray, who's a former Power Ranger, we have a website called The Superhero U, with a letter U, not YOU. And that's a place where we're helping people figure out what their superhero power is and how to engage it at the right time, whether it's confidence or whatever else you might be looking for.
I love that. Yeah, I'm taking a look at the website right now, The Superhero U. And this is something that folks in their mid 20s, early 20s, late 20s will be able to find that superpower that's within them. And I'm looking at the website right now, and it looks great. So, John, I appreciate you coming on. Storytelling is huge. And like you said, it makes everybody's life better when you're able to make the world better. So I love it, John. I love it.
Thanks, Josh, for having me, and stay warm during this cold winter Chicago.
I'll try my best.
Okay.